Hey, Orchinistas, orchid lovers, orchid enthusiasts like I am all over the world. Welcome to the channel Forever Orchids. Today I thought we would talk about your basic toolkit. Your basic toolkit. I've got one right here for growing orchids. Let's see what's inside. Let's talk about if you're growing just a small amount of orchids, maybe like what I have right here. These are some Phalaenopsis that are in bloom. And if you just have just a few of those plants, here are some of the basic things that you're going to need. And then we'll talk about as you have gotten bitten by the bug and you will get more orchids. I guarantee you, you will get more orchids in your collection. You'll need maybe a few more things that you will find very helpful with a larger collection. Now, so this great little toolkit I've got here. So let's just dig in and see what we've got. Okay, I would say the first thing you need, of course, is your plant. It's going to be in a plastic pot. It's going to be in maybe a clay pot. And enjoy those blooms as long as they last. And then when the bloom spike has faded and turned yellow, you're going to need some pruners so that you can go in and cut the bloom spike off of your plant. And I've got two different ones here. This one here is a little Fiskars micro tip pruners. These work really well if you've got to get in tight spaces, like down in between the leaves of the plant to get rid of the bloom spike. And then this one here is a little bit larger. Pruning shears here that you can use. Maybe you're going to be pruning off some larger, maybe dead roots when you're repotting. Maybe the stem is thicker than the little micro tip that would be needed. And then I'm going to suggest that before you cut anything, you're going to want to sterilize your tools. So there are some options for you. I've got here a little Burnzomatic little propane burner. It's real simple to use. Hopefully there we go. Real simple to use, and you're going to want to just sterilize your tools before you do any pruning, any cutting on your plants, and especially between plants, because you don't want to spread viruses or fungus, anything like that. You do not want to spread to your plants. So you can use a little Burnzomatic like this small one here that I have, or you can also use a very large propane tank with a little smart trigger that you can use that screws onto the propane tanks. Excuse me. Yeah, propane. Okay. Now, another thing that you can do is another type of gas tank that you can get is MAP gas. MAP gas is going to be hotter. It's going to sterilize your tools because it gets to a hotter temperature more quickly, and it really does a very good job. Now, if you do not have these burners, I have links in the description for all of the products that I'm going to be talking about today, so that you can just quickly just go to Amazon and buy them really quickly with the links that I provided in the descriptions. Now, a small collection, if you know for sure that you don't have any viruses, you can use 70% isopropanol alcohol and a cotton swab. Now, I don't particularly like to use this to sterilize my tools. I like to use the burners, the little torches, because that's going to get rid of more viruses, more fungus, more bacteria, and you won't be transferring those between your plants. This, in a quick pinch, will do some, but it won't sterilize and get rid of everything. So, what do you need this in your toolkit for, then, you're asking me? Well, another great thing to use this for, with some cotton swabs, is for mealybugs and other type of pests. You can take a cotton swab and fill it full of alcohol and go right into your plants in between, whoops, in between the leaves and on the stems and in the crevices with these to get rid of bugs and pests, which I just did a video. If I haven't released it yet, it's the next video that's coming up after this one, if it wasn't the one before. And we discussed mealybugs. Yeah, I got a couple on my plants, so we had to take care of those. So that will take care of some sterilization and things. Another thing that a lot of people use that's really good if you want to go more of a natural way is just get some ground cinnamon. If you cut the spike off of your plant once it has died back, the flower spike, and it's already died back, you can dab a little bit of cinnamon on that wound and it will help cauterize that. Also, cauterizing with a sterilized hot tool, that'll also work. But anyway, cinnamon is another good thing to have in your toolkit. Okay, what else do we have down in here? Well, how about you want to label your plants? So we've got some plant labels down in here. And they come in different sizes. They come in different lengths, different types of plastic that you can use. And you're just going to want to write the name of your plant and put it down into the pot. Here's one right here in this one. This is Phalaenopsis Chia E Yinlin. And on the back, I can write, when did I get the plant? When did I repot the plant? You could also write on your tag, when did it bloom? When did the roots start growing? Those are great things for you to know about your plants as you are curating your collection of orchids. So we've got labels. Now, another thing that I do is, especially on my Phalaenopsis, I've got several of them that I picked up and there are no ID on them. So I'm not going to have a label with a name on it because I don't know what the name is. So what I do is I have bought these little spiral spikes, little plant stakes. They're used for like picture frames or pictures. And I have a picture of the plant in bloom, the flower, and I just print this off on 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I then laminate it, I cut it out, and now I know when the plant is not in bloom, what does the flower look like? And it reminds me of that particular plant. Okay, let's see, what else do we have down here? Okay, now your pseudobulbs are growing, your bloom spikes are growing, and maybe they're growing like this one, out straight out the plant. And for presentation purposes, we want to have a nice arch on our Phalaenopsis, or we might want our pseudobulbs to stand upright as they're growing. So we have some various things that we can use to tie those up. You can get plant stakes. They're like little bamboo stakes here, like I've got here. And you just take some Velcro green plant tape, I think is what they call it. And you just cut you off a little piece of that and wrap it around either some pseudobulbs or the flower spike and one of the bamboo stakes that you can use. And this is really good. I really like using this a lot because the inside here is really soft and it's not going to damage the plant tissue. Other things that you can use are these little type of clips. And they come in various sizes, and I've got this listed in the description as well. And so with your plant stake, you can stake up your plant and stake up the flowers by just clipping it nicely around there, and that works really, really good. Okay, other things that you can use is you can get green twist tie. It comes on a roll. This is another thing that can be used. You can pull it out at whatever length you need. You can tie up your pseudobulbs with it. You can put a plant ring stake around your larger plants that you have and hold up your pseudobulbs using this here. So I've got that down here in my toolkit. Okay, now things that wouldn't fit in the toolkit, we've got a couple other things in here that we'll talk about. But for the beginners with just a few plants, then you may also want to get, and we'll move this out of the way for a moment, a little watering can. Or you may want to get, this is a multi-purpose sprayer. It has a little pump here and a little lock on it. Excuse me, the pump is right here, and you can press down with your stream coming out. You can lock it so that it will continue, and you might want to fertilize. Mix you up your fertilizer in here. For beginners, I just recommend just using a basic 20-20-20 fertilizer to get you started in the habit and the routine of fertilizing your orchids. And you can use this here for that. You can use these type of sprayers if you're going to mix up anything like a fungicide that would be in a liquid form that you want to spray. You can use that on a small collection. But just a little small, little nice little watering can will help as well. So we have those in our arsenal of supplies. Even with a few small plants, you're still going to need something to pot them in. So I have some various clay pots and plastic pots that I use. I like to use my Cattleyas, anything with a little bit larger pseudobulbs that really like to dry out. I will use the clay pots for that. They would prefer to dry out faster. Make sure you've got a hole in the bottom of your pot. If you get a pot like this with no hole in it, you'll either need to drill a hole or only use this for decorative purposes. You need to have a hole. You don't necessarily have to have the slotted orchid pots with lots of holes in it. Depends on your watering schedule. We could have another whole video about the pots. But this is just going to be hopefully a quick video just with some basic things that you will need. And I've got clay pots in various sizes. And I've also got plastic pots. These are just the green nursery pots with lots of holes in them. I use this a lot with the Phalaenopsis, maybe bulbophyllums. I've got a couple bulbophyllums that are in plastic pots. I've got one that doesn't have as many holes as this, and it's really helping maintain nice pseudobulbs on that particular plant. It only, I think, has one hole in it, and it's planted in sphagnum moss, and it's just, in my environment, maintaining moisture. I don't do, of course, I don't water once a week. I water about 10 days, 2 weeks, sometimes a month, depending upon the plant. So you'll need you some pots, and these are readily available. Like I said, I've got some of those in the description as well. You can get some shallow bulb pans, either in plastic or in clay. Those are used for some of the orchids that are have more shallow roots and have a tendency to just ramble type things. Okay, and then you're going to need your potting mix. And I've got some, I'll have to stand up here to reach it a little bit, but we've got here some Orchiata bark. And this is the premium, the Power Plus Orchiata bark here. This is more of like the medium size. Most of your orchids, because they are epiphytes that grow on trees in nature, then that is why we use bark in our potting mixes. Sometimes you can make up your own mix. I plant a lot of my Phalaenopsis in strictly sphagnum moss and only sphagnum moss. So this is the brand that I use, this premium spag moss. It's premium New Zealand sphagnum moss. And that is actually the best sphagnum moss to use. It has less debris in it. Long fiber sphagnum moss is very good. So try to invest in your good quality sphagnum moss. Other media that you can use with your orchids and mix in with your bark: perlite, charcoal. Charcoal will help your bark it won't break down as quickly. It can also be used to, if you've got like a lot of chlorine in your water, in your tap water, the charcoal will help with that and some impurities that are in your water if you are unable to use rainwater or reverse osmosis water. I know we're getting really complicated there. Don't worry about that. As a beginner, use your tap water. If you feel like your tap water is not that great, either use it filtered or let it set out 24 hours. Just let it set out. And a lot of that impurities, a lot of it will evaporate. The chlorine is an example. I do that here. I was told by a local nursery that the water quality here was not that great. So I only drink filtered water, and then for my orchids, they're getting water from the tap that sits out overnight to get rid of some of those impurities. Okay, back to our toolbox here. There's a couple other things down in here that I think as a beginner, we've covered really all that you need for a few orchids. Now, if you start growing your orchid collection and expanding it, then you may want to get involved in grow lights. I've got some of those listed in the description that I'm using here in my space because I only have so many southern windows. I grow indoors. I grow all of my orchids in southern exposure, except for I do have a couple of paths that are in an east-facing window. And other than that, a lot of my orchids, especially the seedlings, are under lights. So those I have put in the description. There's a link there. And another thing that you will in your environment may want to go and think about getting is a thermohygrometer, something that will show you the temperature and the humidity in your space. I like these here from Govee because they have an app. So I can connect this device to the app and it will keep data for 2 years on what is the high, what's the low, humidity and temperature. And I really like them, and I've got them one back here. I've got them in 2 other grow spaces in this direction on the first floor and the second floor of this rental house that I'm in. So I am really keeping an eye on the humidity. Indoors in the winter, it's really tough in your house to keep the humidity up. I also have, what do you call these things over here? These humidifiers. I've got several of those going. I've got 3 of them in this room that if the humidity starts to drop, then I will turn those on and get those going and try to keep the humidity up. I'm trying for at least 30% or higher in my grow space. This room here is extremely tough. I have a feeling I'm going to end up having to caulk around these windows. I think this rental house, there is no caulking around these windows. I can feel cold air coming in, and I think that's where all my humidity is going. So I'm going to have to fix that as soon as spring comes around. And I'm rambling. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not talking too fast. I hope I'm not giving you guys too much information all at once. I'm not trying to do that. I just want to show you some various things that you can use when you are the curator of your own orchid collection. Now, we've talked about watering a little bit. So you can get involved more in depth in your watering and determine exactly what your pH of your water is, as well as what your total dissolved solids are. And you can get meters. This is a pH meter here. The cap comes off. You turn it on and you put this in water. You probably get to about right here in your water, and it will read what your pH is. We're going to do another whole video about water quality and test coming straight out of the tap water that has sit out for 24 hours, rainwater, and we're going to test the pH, and we can also talk about your fertilizer and what that does to your pH. And we can talk a whole lot more in depth about that on a different video, because orchids will have a tendency at a certain pH, they will suck up more nutrients. They will absorb more nutrients at a certain pH. So we can talk about that on a different video. This is your total dissolved solid meter. And this is going to measure your parts per million. So you will use this when you mix up your fertilizer and be able to test. Maybe you've got a lot of seedlings, they're young, their roots are more tender, more small and smaller. So you may not want to use as much fertilizer that is recommended on your bottle of fertilizer. Let me turn this off here. So that is what a total dissolved solid little meter, quickly talking about that, that is what that is used for. Okay. Oh, you know what else we can do? One other thing is that we talked about the different ties that you can use to tie up your orchids. Well, another thing that you can use is knee-high pantyhose. I did not realize that you could use those, and I have a friend who prefers to use those because you can spiral cut around the knee high, stretch it out, and tie it around if you're going to mount your orchids, as an example. If you're not going to put them in a pot necessarily, she uses it a lot of times for mounting her orchids, and it just has a tendency to blend in with the color of, say, the cork mounting. I've got a little orchid here that is mounted, and all I have done with it is just stuck it in a pot because I don't really have the space to hang indoors a lot of orchids. So, but you could just wrap the orchid with a pantyhose. Who knew? That was kind of funny to me. And so we've been using that at one of the places that I volunteer at when we're mounting on cork, some of the large cattleyas as an example. So I think I have done hopefully a quick little tour of my toolbox here that I have for my orchids. And please, if you have any other things that you like to use, that you have in your toolbox that maybe I didn't cover, leave me some comments. I'd love to hear that from you. And I just hope you are having a wonderful day. And until next time, guys, happy orchid growing. Bye.